Alright, I think we are live. Hello everyone and welcome to another Welding Wednesday webinar, 3Ws. Today we are going to be talking about welding gold. Some tricks and tips that we have for you and your Orion welding machine while welding gold. But first, I want to start out by telling a little story that I heard one time. About gold specifically, really. I mean, most jewelry welding, most people out there welding jewelry are either welding gold or silver. Those are the most common. One time I heard this guy tell a story. You know what he said? You walk into a bar and you have, two options sitting at the bar. And you walk in and you think, okay, I'm going to buy this person a drink, or I'm going to buy this person a drink. Well, let's say you're silver. You walk into that bar and you not only have to buy the drink, but then you have to, give a little back rub, and you got to sit and hear life's story, and you got to stay there all night, right? Well, the other option is gold. When there's gold, you just got to walk in and buy the drink, and that's it. You don't even have to sit down. Well, they don't even need you to sit down or want to sit down or back rub or talk. I know this is a weird story, but it's kind of true. When you're working with silver, it requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of effort. You got to stay there. You have to take care of it. Whereas with gold, gold's super easy to weld. If you're scared to weld gold, no fear. Gold's probably one of the easier metals to weld. So it's kind of a dumb story, but I legitimately heard someone say that one time, and I thought it was really funny. So anyways, let's get started. Welding gold. It's easy. We're going to keep this episode quick because it's such an easy metal to weld. So stay with me here. First off, the melting point of gold is 1,948 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, it's not much difference from silver, but that little bit of a difference in your melting of that metal just makes it an easier metal to weld. Whereas with silver, you have to do the things we've talked about in past episodes. Non-pure gold is an alloy. So pure gold, as we know, is 24 karat. That's pure 100% gold. Everything else is an alloy. So you have 18 karat gold, you have 14 karat gold, 12 karat gold, 10 karat gold. You also have different colors of gold. So you have white gold, yellow gold, rose, pink, green. And the reason why they're alloys is because you're mixing metals, right? With white gold, you have nickel, silver, and palladium mixed in to make white gold. For yellow gold, you're mixing in zinc, copper, and silver. And that's what gives it their characteristics and their color. For rose and pink, you're mixing in copper. And then with green, you're mixing in silver. So that's why you have different types of gold, different colors of gold, different reactions when you're welding the gold because of these different combinations of metal that are in it. And in addition to that, you're going to have see some different things than welding other metals. For example, when you weld gold, a lot of times you'll see black or darkening in the area where you're welding. It's because of those other metals that are mixed in with gold. So we'll talk about some of the ways to get around that and make sure that it's not very bad. Still fighting this darn cold. What is it, like the third episode I've done where I'm coughing? I apologize for that. Okay, so we talked about the colors. Now I want to talk about the different carats, right? So as I said, 24 karat gold is pure gold. When you have an 18 karat gold, it's 75% gold, and then the other stuff is mixed in, right? So 18 parts gold, 6 parts other metals. With your 14 karat gold, you're about 58.3% gold, right? So that's about 14 parts gold and 10 parts of other metal. And then your 12 karat is 50% gold. So your 50% gold, 12 parts gold, 12 parts other metals. And then you have your 10 karat where it's about 41.7% gold. So that's 10 parts gold and 14 parts other metals. So this stuff is good to know because when you're welding, you'll see differences through the different metals. And if you're using an Orion welder, we'll cut to the screen here. On the newer systems, you can choose the type of metal you're welding. And the reason why you have white gold and yellow gold is because some of those parameters need to change based on the metal that you're welding. And then these are just good general starting points. You might find that with a pure 24 karat gold, you might need to adjust the time or increase some power compared to a 10 karat gold, or vice versa. Probably more vice versa. The pure gold's going to weld a lot easier. So that's why we have that on these screens here. So we'll go back to that. With your gold, a lot of times what will happen is when you go to make a weld, the metal will melt and it'll kind of create like a weld pool. Or some overflowing, right? And it'll make the metal kind of ball up in an area and not where you're actually welding. So a trick with gold is to cut the time in half. All right. So on your welder, some of your welders won't be able to do that. If you have an M pulse or if you have a 100C, the time is already preset. But on the 150S and on the 200i2, you can go in there and you can adjust the time. Or on some of the older models like the 150i that came out before the 200i2. You can control those weld parameters, right? You can set your power and your time and everything. So if you ever notice that you're seeing the pooling of metal, right? So let's say this is the spot you're welding. You put a weld there, but then it kind of pools up on one side or over like this, whatever. Try taking the time of your weld and shortening it. Now, if we go back to the screen here, I'll show you what that might look like. So here's your weld. On the older systems, on anything but a 200i2 where it's just the normal weld waveform like this, you're not dealing with the triangle or square. This is what it looks like. So if I'm welding at 9, 10 watt seconds, this is what my weld looks like. Now from the start of the weld to the end of the weld, right? Well, if I cut my time in half, the weld's going to end sooner. And that's going to help so that your gold doesn't pool up, create a weld pool or overflowing of the metal. So that's one trick for working with gold. Now I mentioned blackening. A lot of times with gold you get the kind of black film or residue, or even sometimes it seems like it's in the metal. Now, a couple tricks with that. Make sure your fingers are clean, okay? A lot of times the oils from your fingers will be part of the cause of that. But in addition, with yellow gold you have zinc in it, you have copper. A lot of times those metals are causes of that black. So keep your fingertips clean, clean the metal, but then always use a clean, sharp electrode. Okay, if you have contamination on the electrode or it's not completely sharp, it can also be a cause of having that blackness in the area where you're welding on gold. So remember, it's not game over if you see that blackness. Utilize your fiberglass brush, okay? So wherever that black area is, clean it off real good. If you still see it, that's okay. It'll buff out when you go to buff and polish or sand and polish, okay? So just remember that. If it's black, it's not ruined, it's not the end of the world. That'll buff out, no problem. So remember, clean fingertips, clean workpiece, clean sharp electrode, and when you're done welding, clean the area with a fiberglass brush. So, those are the two main things that we see working with gold here at Orion. You get the weld pools and you get the blackening. So we want you to chime in if you have questions. If there's things you've seen while working with gold that I haven't mentioned, let me know. I'm going to do some weld examples right now. So while those questions come in, we'll answer them after doing some welding. So I'm going to weld some gold here, and I'll continue talking to let you know what we're doing. Okay, so here another key thing, as we've mentioned in other videos, it's very important to use, if you're adding metal or if you're filling a hole or anything like that, to use the same type of metal wire as the metal you're welding. So I'm going to add metal on the top of this ring shank, and this is an 18 karat gold shank. Did I say that right? Shank, right? Yeah. That's, you know, you kind of say something one time, you're like, that doesn't sound right in my head. But anyways, so here we have 18 karat gold, and I have some 18 karat gold wire. So I'm going to add that to the top of this, and hopefully, I think we have a good angle. I think we have good focus. You'll be able to see that, unlike silver, you don't have to work as hard or try as hard with welding gold. It welds very easily. It smooths out very easy. You know, once you add your metal and it kind of balls up on top, you can weld around it and it smooths out just beautifully. So let me get the right setting here for my 200 I2. I'm going to go to about 8 milliseconds on the length and 5.8. Let me just double check this real fast. Yeah, that's good. About 5.8, 6 kilowatts on my time. I like to use a standard plus ignition and no agitation. Now, as we talked about agitation last week, we were working with silver. Agitation is very good with gold too, or can be good to use with gold as well. So you can experiment with it. Our recommended setting includes a low agitation on the 200 I2. So you'll find that working with gold, utilizing agitation is really good. Just like we talked about last week, it's all about the forming together and the grain structure of those welds when you do them, so there's no cracking. A more pure gold is reacts better to that agitation. So I don't have agitation right now, but it's not necessary. So just gonna go here, set my wire where I need to weld, and just stack that right on top. Now you can see I've added a little ball of metal, gold metal there. So if I hit around it, you can see it flattens that out. And as you can see, you don't have any pits or holes, or porosity. Just welds very beautifully. Gold, I wish all things were gold. But you know what? When we add silver to the mix, it gives us a challenge. And like I said last week, you know, life's about challenges. Maybe I said it 2 weeks ago. Maybe I didn't say it at all and I just thought about it. But you know what? What fun is life if you don't have a little challenge, you know? A little adversity. The first part of adversity spells adventure. So you know what? It's just me giving some Scotty advice for you there. This one didn't even turn black very much, so we had it cleaned really well. We had a good, clean, sharp electrode. and that kept us looking really nice. So there we've added some metal. I want to do another example, just showing a ring. So I have a ring here that I've cut, and I'm going to keep the same settings, and we're just going to piece that back together. I'm not blocking anything, am I, Thane?
All's well.
Okay, so here we go. I might need a little bit, nope. Ah, just welds so nice, I love it. Now this is a lower karat gold. I think this is a 10 karat gold band that I'm welding on. So it's going to have a lot more black, as you saw. Maybe, hopefully you were able to see. I don't know how zoomed in that was. But if you can tell, I mean, it just welds beautifully. And then, like we've shown in other videos, you just add your gold metal right on top and you'd be good to go. And then that'll buff out when you go to clean that up. So I'm just going to do a weld here on the inside. Give me that extra strength. Sorry, I think I'm blocking. Get my hand out of the way here. And voila! After adding some metal, a little buff and polish, your gold ring is ready to go. As you can see, it's a lot easier than some of our silver samples. Just, like I said, it welds very easy. And lastly, I just want to show an example welding on a prong. So we'll do that right here. Got to turn my power down for this, because we are working a lot closer to a stone. And I'm just going to do a weld on top just to see what we look like here. Good. Okay, and as we taught in other lessons, I want to get the right angle here. Let me do... Okay. So, as we showed in other lessons about retipping prongs, you want to take the wire over the stone and then weld on that outside part. Sorry, I had a weird angle trying to make sure that you guys could see this in the camera, but as you can see, we're getting metal on top of that prong there. Not my best work, but as you can see, we retip the prong. The opal is fine. And that was very, very simple. Gold doesn't heat up as much as silver, so it's a lot easier to work around stones. And there we have it. So, that is the basics, tricks and tips for working with gold. If we have any questions, we'll take those now. Or if maybe some have come in while I've been talking. Thane, do we have anything out there?
Yeah, so the first question was, if they're getting holes, what's causing the holes?
Okay, what's causing the holes? Again, it comes back to the type of metal. So if you're working with a lower karat gold, you have more zinc and copper in that. So a lot of times that's why you're getting the holes. Or holes or porosity? Are we talking probably porosity? Yeah. So that's okay. When you're adding your wire, just fill in the area real good. Try using some agitation. So turn your, start with, depending what machine you have, maybe start with a sloped agitation and allow that metal to form together better. Remember, like we said last week, if you turn agitation on, move your power down, okay? Because agitation will add additional power. So if you're at about 10 watt seconds and it's welding good, but you're having porosity, turn down to 6 or 7 and then add that sloped agitation and try that to see if that clears up the porosity. Any other suggestions on that thing?
Nope. And then the next question was platinum. They're having similar results in platinum.
Oh, okay. Platinum. I think we mentioned this last week also with the agitation. Platinum requires a lot of heat. So where you're welding something, just for example, let's say at 10 watt seconds on maybe gold or silver, with platinum you want to be like around 20. You need to hit it with a lot of power, and that's going to help the metal form together better. Also, adding agitation will help to eliminate some of that porosity.
Another question we had is it better to use argon or nitrogen?
Okay, we've had this question and this discussion many times. There's places out in the world where you can't get argon, and so that's why we've suggested nitrogen. But in all of our studies or tests, we found that the most pure argon, 99.6 I believe it is, or 99, 99.996 pure argon provides the best results when doing pulse arc welding. So if you can't find it and you have to use nitrogen, that's okay, but argon will always work better.
Perfect. Next question, what about welding gold fill or something plated?
Okay, so we didn't talk about that yet. Gold fill is not gold like we've talked about, right? It's usually a type of, it's like pot metal. It has a lot of zinc in it. It's high zinc content, pot metal. So unfortunately, gold fill, you kind of have to treat it as though you're welding a zinc type, zinc or a bronze or a brass. Obviously you can't weld zinc, but like a bronze or a brass that's a high zinc content. We'll probably do a show talking more about your bronzes and brasses. We need to do some more research on that, but the settings that you find on the welder for a bronze or a brass are good to use with gold fill. Do you have any recommendations on that? Like when you're working with something with a high zinc content, what the best way is it? Do you want to heat it up a lot? Do you want to?
Yeah, the best recommendation is to hit it with a number of welds in the same spot and try and blow out as much of the zinc as possible. Okay. Trying to get through that. Now, if you've got something very thin and it's plated, or then obviously it can cause more harm than good. That's where the 200 I2 and this very low power settings can be very helpful as well. Okay, so there you have it coming from Thane. He's one of our welding consultants / marketing gurus. So that's what's good to do with gold fill. Now plated, it depends on what metal's underneath. The problem with plated is that when you weld, it's going to remove that. So it's not going to look the same, right? So you'll have to either add gold wire. Well, even then, you have to replate it, right? So if you have something plated that needs to be welded, you're going to have to replate it. Now, we've mentioned this in past episodes. Silver wire is a very good, or silver metal, utilized through a silver wire is a very good method for working with plated and gold fill. It goes in, it fills in the holes that Thane was talking about that happens a lot with zinc-filled metals. So it's good to use silver wire, but then you'll have to replate it, or it's going to look a little different in that area where you added silver wire. So plan on using a silver wire and then replating, or a silver wire and expecting to have some color disfiguration, but when you buff and polish that out, you can decide from there what you want to do. I was thinking of something else I thought. I guess that's it. Anything else to add to that? Nope.
Okay. So, any other questions?
Maybe just go through what we've talked about in some of the previous trainings
On
in the series.
Okay. They have to do with gold or just...
Just all of them.
Okay, so some of the things we've talked about since the beginning, right? We went over welding and how to set up your machine, make sure everything's correct. We've talked about silver, we've talked about agitation, we've talked about resizing rings. With gold, all the same things apply, right? So if you have a thicker ring, you remember you want to cut it in a V, weld, and then add your gold metal. Just like how we said, sorry about that. Camera tunes out after a little bit of time, sorry about that. So remember, same things apply when you're working with gold. When it comes to tricks and tips with, resizing a ring, retipping a prong, same thing, right? You bring the wire over the stone and then come in from the outside with your electrode. And don't be scared to weld gold. It's very easy. We know that a lot of precious pieces out there are your gold ones. Remember to start with your power lower and then work your way up. You don't want to come in with too much power and take a thin piece and put a hole in it or anything. So always start with your power lower. Remember, like we mentioned, keeping that electrode clean and sharp. Back to the gold fill question and working with bronzes and brasses or things that have zinc in it. You'll probably have to clean that electrode more frequently, like every 10 or so welds, to kind of keep that area clean and clean the workpiece as well. It's going to get very black, so you'll want to weld that area, like Thane said, a lot to burn out the zinc and that causes the porosity. But you will have to keep your brush close, your fiberglass brush close, to clean the area, and then maybe have 10 or so electrodes ready and sharpened and clean that you can just switch out real fast. And that's it. So just remember, joint preparation is important. Keep the metal clean, and don't be scared. You can weld gold just like anything else. It's very easy. Do we have any other questions? All right. And I just have to say, if that story I told at the beginning made no sense about the bar and the two women and buying drinks, it didn't make sense to me either. But you know what? Thane explained it. And the important thing is just remember, silver requires a lot more work and, having your hand there on their back, giving them support. Whereas gold, it's very easy. Weld, you're going to be like, wow, this is beautiful. I wish everything was gold. At least that's what I think. So before I say anything else that sounds really dumb, I'm going to say goodbye. If you have questions, you know where to reach us. sales@sunstonewelders.com or sales@orionwelders.com. As we've said before, Sunstone is the main company. Orion is our pulse arc welders, laser welders, and laser engravers line. We can be reached either way. We'll see you next week.